What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of the Deadpan Diaries. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll start off with me saying I'm sorry. Last week, it was me that canceled. I was just having a rough time and needed to do less content for 1 week, and it was nice to get back into it this week and have a wonderful conversation. So, as always, I'm joined by that bronze girl,
Mm-hmm.
Jasmine. How are you?
Me. Good. How are you?
What's the whitest way to say it? I mean, Jasmine, right?
You can do what my chiropractor did and be like, "How do you pronounce your name? Is it Hasman?"
Oh,
That's the one.
I knew where you were going the second you said it. And I'm just like, oh, white people. How many? Let me ask you this, because I know you have, but I'm worried that the answer is not as many as I think it is. Have you been asked? Is it Jasmine like the rice?
No, usually it's Jasmine like the princess.
Oh shit. Okay,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, hey, couple things to the chat. We had a couple new people in the chats. Just as always, I guess I should do a little intro. The Deadpan Diaries is a talk show with Jasmine and I, and we just talk about various different subjects. All the previous broadcasts are on my YouTube, free for you guys to watch. It's been really fun and nice. The reception's been great. But we've gone everywhere. We talked about toxic positivity. We talked about flirting. What was our other one?
Motivation.
Motivation and discipline. That's
Mm-hmm.
right. That was good. Those are all good. We get all over the place. We do have plans of having guests. We promised, but we've talked about that each week, and just simply hasn't happened yet. But it certainly will. This
Mm-hmm.
week we're gonna talk about the economics of being a streamer, essentially, or a content creator. Kind of
Any
finding,
freelancer, really.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just whatever this field ish of work, and finding your value, because that's a incredibly. I mean, the funny thing about this, like I was talking to Bronze before this, is like nobody really knows. There's going to be people that claim they know their value and stuff like that, but and some
Really
people have
is.
a better idea than others. But just the discussion around how you can view yourself, market yourself, and talk about yourself, I think is productive.
Yeah.
So I've had a lot of friends that are streamers and content creators say that they watch the show, and it's just one of those subjects that we could get a lot of people on to talk about, and it's interesting. So, anyways, we're going to talk about that. But then, like I said, this will be uploaded to YouTube, and Cobra, my wonderful, wonderful producer, has also been making this into a podcast. So all this content is digestible in those ways if you like. And then, of course, as always, if you're liking this stuff, go to That Bronze Girl's Twitch channel, subscribe to her, follow her channel, do the same here, or consider it. That is the best way to make sure that this content keeps coming at you. And then, before we get into the subject, the near future, our next topic that we want to tackle is a gym episode. I know we've talked about that a couple times. Bronze is a friend that's like a trainer, but he's got a regular 9 to 5 job, so it's kind of hard for that person to get in here. So instead, we know some other fitness people like my friend Neuro, or maybe V, who I have not confirmed yet, so we have to ask them and see if they can. But anyways, we're gonna do a gym episode. So the reason I'm giving you this preemptive talk about it is think about questions you want to have, because that's going to be mostly like Bronze and I talking about our experience with somebody. But then I hope there's going to be a lot of chat interaction, because that's the main purpose of that, is to hopefully help people connect with their physical selves a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this topic, I'm not. Do you have an idea where you want to start with this?
I don't know. So I mean, Cobra said that it was something it touched on in my stream. So I'm trying to
Yeah,
think like how that started. Oh, I kind of did. I said that anytime you work for yourself or you do any kind of freelancing, there's like a scale, I feel like, and there's
yeah,
going to be times where you will look back on work you did and feel like you got fucking
yep,
raked over the coals. Like that will happen several times. And I was talking about like, should I have known better back then? And that's kind of where it was like an inner monologue. And I was talking out loud on my stream. And I was just like, well, should I have known better? Were there ways for me to figure that out? And to a certain extent, I feel like there wasn't.
yep.
But on the flip side, I feel like a big part of it was I clearly didn't place value on what I was doing. And that's why I took a deal that I already felt like, wasn't really working out for me. if that makes sense. And I'm
Yeah,
sure, have you had experiences like that? Do you ever feel like you
all the
got taken
time.
advantage of?
Yeah, and this is why I like this topic a lot because you're absolutely dead on. But what I like about it is that it's a huge gray area, right? There's not really a solid answer. Like if you're a content producer or a freelancer, like you said, if that's just kind of your business model. What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 1 of the Deadpan Diaries. I'm a little. I actually am sad because I'm to blame for this. Okay, there you go. He was playing in one of the previous episodes.
Mm,
That would have been amazing if. Yeah, okay, the chat heard it too. Good. No worries, Cobra, at all. It's just like there's
I
like
didn't
people
have
on camera that can talk while a voice is in their head. I'm not. My eyes just go.
yeah.
Can you do
If
that when a
your
producer's
mic
talking to you? Can you keep talking?
It depends. I
Yeah.
can, as long as it's not my voice. If someone's
Oh
talking
yeah.
to me, I can usually have like a full sentence, but like I have my mic feed back into my headset. And if there's for any reason as a delay, it's like I'm having a stroke, like live on air. I'm like, so that's why because like, you're hearing yourself
Yeah.
on a half-second delay. And once I was recording a podcast and that kept happening, and the people that invited me on as a guest were like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No, I
You
have
can
like
handle
half a
that.
second delay and I keep trailing off in my sentences." So that's why I feel like I should, but it's funny to watch
It
for
is.
sure.
But there's pros, man. They, like anchors and stuff like that. They can have 4 people in their head and they're still talking. They'll get right through the segment. It's amazing. Anyways,
Mhm.
so what I was saying is I really like the subject because you will get taken advantage of, and I don't feel like there's necessarily a way to get around the inevitability of that, but there's a way to learn and then to master, hopefully, techniques in the future. So, like Tachula in the chat brings up a great point, and this is why I think it colors this really well. Sometimes doing gigs for exposure, right? So if you hear people talk about that, that's super demonized. It's made, there's jokes, there's comics about laughing, about like trying to pay rent with exposure, et cetera, et cetera. But the brutal, honest answer is sometimes that exposure actually is equitable and is actually good for you. Like if you're working alongside someone absolutely disgustingly massive and they're doing a project where they bring you on, typically it's kind of a funny threshold because it'll hit a certain point where they pay you anyways because they have fuck you money. It's like it doesn't matter. Like, what do
Mhm.
you want? $3,000? It's fine. We're $1 million company or whatever, a $1 bajillion company. But then there's this other threshold where you don't necessarily want to push back. Like if Sean Connery wants to do a novel with you, like a voiceover novel, you don't go like, Sean, it was nice of you to offer $5,000, but actually I'm looking for closer to 10. He'd be like, what? Maybe he would. The risk of that is
Mhm.
real. The point is, sometimes exposure actually is transferable and good. But how can you tell? And how can you tell if they are underpaying you despite the exposure? And where does that measure?
And exposure doesn't always work.
Right?
Like I think exposure is I also belong to that very small minority of people that's like, I think exposure actually can pay your bills.
Yeah.
Um, but sometimes you, and I've talked about this on my stream a lot. You have to look at the audience you're hitting. You have to look at how you're going to potentially get your name in front of them, because it does not, being on camera with somebody does not matter enough. You have to have like recognition, name recognition, a way to tie it back to whatever you're trying to sell, whether that's your stream or whether that's your Patreon, and like trying to figure out if that audience is going to mesh with your audience,
Yep.
whether they, just because they consume this content, are they going to come and consume the content you're creating? There's a lot of factors there. You can be on the front page with the most famous people in the world and pull 10,000 viewers, and it does not mean jack and or shit if you can't figure out, or and if those people aren't going to come watch you on your own stream or on your own YouTube or on whatever else you're trying to sell. In some cases, all exposure is not created equal. I
Yeah.
guess that would be number one. And number two, as I discussed off camera with Jeff earlier this week, is sometimes when you do try to broker a deal or back out of a deal, you sour the relationship.
Yes.
And that can be scary. That can be frightening. It can be a simple gotcha, but it's one of those things where you're like, this person's never going to work with me
Right.
again. This person's one of the biggest names in this particular sector. Is this going to destroy my career? Is this going to, that's another factor. So sometimes you'll take deals that are shitty just because you don't know if you ask for more, or if you say no, if that's going to be something that gets you blacklisted, because it does. People
Yep.
say it doesn't, but it does.
And yeah, and I feel like that's where this conversation. I love that you brought it to this place too, because that's where I think it's especially hard for a lot of people. Is they're like, I don't want to do this gig because I'm really because there's other reasons too, right? Like they're busy. That would happen in lieu of them doing another gig that pays better or something. But they're like, but this group of people is different. So some of the things I found, and this is where we can get to some tangible stuff that I found is really good because everything Braun just said, I fully agree with. A lot of times, if you can do a gig with a completely different group of people or a different scene. So for me as a StarCraft content producer, for the most part, I've noticed some upticks in my social media stuff and my engagements, that kind of thing. When I, like, for instance, go back to when I first did role play, that was a completely different audience. It was different people coming in. And then a lot of times those people can end up being like, wow, I like your content. And then they check out other stuff. And then that kind of goes there. So that's where that exposure comes in. But for instance, if I do, this is kind of funny because this is actually almost underselling my own StarCraft show, but like when I bring other StarCraft people onto my show, a lot of times the people that follow them already follow me or know me. So you kind of want to equate that into the algorithm of is it worth it for you or not. So then it becomes like, are they paying you? And is that pay good? But then also, what's the content? If it's no hair off your back and it's very easy and it's 1 hour out of a day and you're fine, all of a sudden the scales go out too, right? Like
Mhm.
I'm not as concerned because then what Braun said is really true. And I'll tell you, I'll peel back this curtain, and this is like something that people don't want to admit as much, but for the benefit of our show, I'll do it. When people say no to me to come on the Pylon show, and they could have the most legitimate reasons in the world, I don't blackball them. I'm not about to out myself like that, but there is, I don't know if it's just me or if or what, but there's that momentary like, a little bit of a fuck you, little bit of a fuck. Like I've had people be like, "Nah, it's too late at night. I don't want to stay up for that." And I don't argue with them because I'm not going to force them onto my show. But at the same time, I'm like, that's too bad. Whereas when they're like, "Hey, that's late at night," but here, this is where we get into the fucking good stuff, guys. If you go, "Wow, that's late at night," but I'll tell you what, I've always wanted to do some content with you. You're pretty, I really enjoy your stuff. For you, I'll do it. Then the star eyes start popping, and then I'm like, wow, this person's amazing. I want to invite them to my birthday party. You know what I mean? It's real
Yeah.
though.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when you're like working with companies and stuff too. And this has worked in my benefit where you do something like for free or as like a one-time guest gig as a favor to them. And then they end up liking you. So they hire you on for 1 gig a week and then 2 gigs a week. And
Yep.
then before you know it, you got your own show on that channel. And that has happened for me as well. Something that started from doing something free for exposure ended up becoming something that I got paid to do. So sometimes, like if it's a company you really want to work with, you might take a smaller paycheck because then you can broker for a better paycheck the next time you work with them
Yes.
and you'll have more of a rapport with them. But that's still hard to do because in some ways, like now like there's almost been like a precedent set that like, oh, you
Yes.
do this and I pay you this. And if you then try to go back and be like, ah, well, in the past you paid me this and I said yes, but now I want more, that can also be a hiccup too. So it's this shit is awkward and it's hard
Oh
to
yeah.
navigate because we don't like there's not like a going rate in this industry that we know of. Like there's not really like, oh, well, it's pretty standard for most people to make X amount for Y work. And then
Yep.
you have other people, and this is what we were talking about on my stream is you have other people that lowball it. Like and artists deal with this way more than we do. So artists, my heart goes out to you.
Hmm.
When you're sitting there doing like, I don't know, let's take oh, I take commissions and a black and white commission of a shoulder up portrait is, let's I'm just gonna throw a number out there, $200. But then there's somebody else that does it for 20. It's hard for you to keep like and you might value your time and you might value your like art and everything at that level, but it's going to be hard to sell that to other people when there's like, oh, well, this person does it for 20, this person does it for 50, what makes yours 200?
Yep.
It actually devalues your product as well because there is like a marketplace. And so you now have to like even if your product is higher quality, you now have to like lower it a little bit even just because of and that happens with content creation as well. Like if you are expected to be paid to appear for 4 hours in a RPG or on a talk show and someone else does it for free, now the expectation has been set that, oh, well, you're just supposed to do it for free because, you're
Hmm.
getting exposure on this channel. When really it's like, but I should be paid for my time. And sometimes that can give you like a little bit of a reputation or something like
Oh yeah.
that. Yeah.
And that's where the political game of this, and that's why I found I mean, one of the many reasons I found the subject to be really interesting is I find it very, for me, I'm very successful with the kind of paper trail of this. So, like, exactly to your point, sometimes I'll be like, hey, our budget for this is only such and such. We really cannot pay you as much as we think you're worth. Is it okay if you do this? Now, it's really important to just tell you guys flat out. I don't know. I'm pulling this number out of my butt. I would say something like 50% of the time that's actually true. A lot of times the budget is that because they paid somebody else twice as much, or
Hmm.
they're they're just allotting that much to you and the rest of the budget's to the seven other guests or whatever, and they don't have to have seven other guests, they just do want to have that. So there's reasons, right? It's not that the earth is literally spinning in a direction where everyone's going to die tomorrow and that's just how much money they have finite available to them. That's a terrible example. I don't even know what I'm saying. Anyways, the point is, like, it's sometimes true and it's sometimes just their argument to get you to accept that. And that's why it's so important to set the precedent that Ron's talking about, where I'll be like, hey, that's a lot less than I usually take, but I'll tell you what, I'm really excited about working with you, so I will accept you for that your offer. Let's just have a discussion next time around if you're happy with the content about perhaps increasing that or talking about other ways to supplement that. And that's actually, I found that to be really successful because it's not me saying, ugh, this is terrible, but okay, if you promise to pay me more next time, because nobody ever can. They're not going to be like, yeah, we promise. No one's going to say that. So you
Hmm.
have to give them something they can say yes to, make it sound like you're really easy to work with and reasonable, but give them the notion as well that you'd like to work on getting more next time. And I've done that wrong, to be honest with you. So one of the gigs I do in StarCraft, it is an amazing gig. I love it. I go to almost every one of them, but they do not pay well, and that's okay because it kind of has the spirit of they crowdsource money. It's like a homebrew thing, so they're not dumped on with millions of dollars. But the kind of funny thing is I've always been like, that's fine. I've never really pushed for more money. But then they brought on new talent and paid them more. And that's when Jeff was like, hold on,
Mm.
motherfucker. I'm like, what the fuck? And I don't have any right to be indignant about that because I didn't set up the paper trail. But then it creates this awkward engagement where I'm like, hey,
You feel like you're
y'all,
being
yeah,
taken advantage of
a little
because
bit.
yeah. Yeah. I actually have kind of a personal question for you
Yeah,
because
please.
I respect you a lot. You're a professional in a field that, as you know, I've been a spectator in for a long time.
Hmm.
So, um, I guess, okay, how do I want to phrase this? Here we go. So, with a lot of what we do, a huge chunk of we say content creator, but a lot of people what they hear, especially companies, is influencer. So much of it comes down to follower counts, view counts, this, that, and the other. Now, from my point of view, with
Yeah.
some of the work I've done with like outside companies and things like that don't involve necessarily streaming, I still put a high value on myself because I feel like I bring something unique to the table. However, sometimes you don't see that reciprocated because maybe, like, especially in my case, I don't have that follower count or that view
Hmm.
count to back it up. So when talking to people, I have a hard time bartering for my worth or like speaking for myself because I feel like the other people I'm working with are bigger than me. And even though in my heart of hearts, I'm like, you know what? I'm a pretty cool person. I bring a lot of energy to the
Yeah.
table. Does your inner monologue change with that? Like if you're working with somebody that has like 4 times your follower count, what like do you how do you keep that inner self-esteem and like that right value on your worth? Because even though you might not put butts in seats, you clearly bring something to the table.
Great question, and this is a awesome subject because this is something we face all the time. So a good example for me was I was brought on to do the it's actually embarrassing forgetting the names, the Command and Conquer Rivals EA press release. There's like this big massive thing. The guy I was facing was a YouTuber that had, I don't know, I think it's like 1 million subs or something like that. Like he's a pretty big deal. Um, it's all I'm not down talking, but it's like screaming emotional reactions to phone games type of thing. He's like the phone guy on YouTube. And then I have 18,000 YouTube subscribers, you know, and his Twitter had like 340,000, mine has 94 or whatever. So it's obviously night and day. But I am a lot better in front of him or in front of cameras. I bring a different element, dry sense of humor, that kind of stuff. I'm also a fixture in like RTS scenes, which he's not, and that's what this game is trying to kind of appease to. So it's tough because to answer your question fully, like if you work with some people where they literally just don't know and they only look at numbers, I don't feel like there's much you can say. So that becomes part of my overall calculus of do I want to do this gig? Because sometimes, and I've gotten this language before, where they're like, "Hey, we'd love to work with you. It's important that you understand that you're a smaller creator, so we're gonna price you out that way." And then it hasn't happened much, mind you, though, because again, StarCraft's been around for so long that I don't usually get talked to that way. But when it has happened, just being who I am, and this is also a position of privilege, right? Like I have gigs, I can pay the bills. So when they talk to me that way, I go, "Oh, yeah, that's okay. Hopefully you'll find somebody that you're more interested in." But for me, I'm so busy that I'm not interested in working in that kind of situation. And I can do that. And I understand that's privilege, by the way, right? Because again, if I needed a gig to pay my bills, sometimes you got to fucking just go, "I understand. Yep, thank you." And it sucks. It feels like shit, right? But for me, I don't need to do that. But when you work with a production group that knows that what you bring is like you bring out the energy in other people, legitimacy, like you have value that's outside of a Twitter following, you can price yourself higher. Like you're super charismatic, Bronze. You're interesting, and just not that this is a cool thing to say, but you're a female ethnic woman as well. So like there's
You
gonna be.
think that would get me some
It
points
should.
somewhere?
It will, and it should. But if they have a panel of like four
I
white
need to play
dudes,
that card more.
well,
That
yeah,
dog is creepy as fuck. It is a creepy dog. I agree.
he just likes the way we talk, man. He's intense. Listen, you need to pay attention like my dog does. Okay, good boy. But there's value outside of it too. And the funny thing is, like I said, for the people in the know, I've seen people with like 40,000 Twitter followers or 20, but every tweet they have gets like 600 likes, 300 retweets because their fan base is just more engaged and active on Twitter. Whereas for me, I've been on Twitter for 10 years. I would say half my Twitter followers are probably not even on Twitter. Like they're dead accounts. So it looks nice to have 94,000 or whatever it is. And I like Twitter myself. But unless I say something pretty big on Twitter, I don't get hundreds and hundreds of likes and retweets. So it's kind of interesting that way. You know what I'm saying? And it's too bad when I feel like it's less though. We're working with less people where you show up and they're like, you're a tiny person, so we're gonna treat you like such.
I ran into it a little bit with relics and rarities.
Did you?
Yeah, I felt like not on their end because, like it's all like Screen Actors Guild stuff, so it wasn't on that level at all.
Yeah.
It was more of like a personal thing where I felt awkward and weird because there's me and then there's like stars.
Yeah.
And
she did a show with people off of Daredevil, guys, so they're
and like Kevin Smith and stuff like that. And I was just like, oh man, Kevin Smith is what, like millions of followers on Twitter.
A big deal. Yeah, he's a big deal.
Yeah. And so it feels like, I don't know, it's hard. It's hard to like ask for anything or like have wants. And the thing is, they were super nice to me. Like, in fact, the producers sat me down several times and were like, it's like if you need anything, let us know. And it was like internally, I was just like, but you guys don't need me here, like and they were like, that's not true. We like you. We chose you specifically. We've worked with you before. We like the work you've done with us before. That's obviously why we chose you, because we like you. We want you here. And I'm just over here like, but why?
I get it.
So I sometimes lowball myself sometimes, or sometimes I'm like, oh, huh. Okay.
Well,
that's
being
interesting.
real, what has been the impact after that show? Have you noticed a spike in your stuff?
On Twitter, yes, but not on Twitch because I don't do like a lot of roleplay stuff on Twitch, and it's more of like a YouTube crowd anyway. Which is why I was talking about the value of exposure. I know that firsthand. Yeah. I know that down to a T because looking at analytics, there's a lot of stuff where I have name recognition or brand recognition and all that stuff, but like when it comes down to like how that translates into like viewership or subs and stuff like that, it's not the same. But that's not the fault of the projects I'm on, that's my fault, and I've always said that.
Mm,
'Cause, like, it's hard. There's a lot of people who know who I am who don't even know that I stream, but that's
mm,
because they view me as, like, talent that appears on other people's shows, you know? So, I get hit up for voice acting gigs, but I can't get people to, like,
yeah.
watch my channel. But that's on me, because like, I either need to start branching out into YouTube or need to have more RPG content on my channel or like, diversify a little bit because clearly that's where my reach is, but that's not the content I'm making.
It's funny
So,
too, because and this is related, but it's almost a complaint about something else. I feel like if there's like 3 clicks or any kind of typing that it takes to find somebody, it almost never happens. And this is going to be some weird dystopian, scathing criticism of humanity in itself. But like, even on this screen it says at that bronze girl. There's going to be people that hear you and they're like, "That's cool. All right, I'll check it out." And they'll type in bronze girl on Twitter, and then they'll give you a follow. Because that's just like they may have Twitter open on their dashboard or whatever, add your name, cool, easy peasy. But if it's like on a show and they're not overtly showing your Twitter or something like that, very few people I find will be like, this person's really cool and interesting. I'm going to look them up. What is their name? And they'll get like Jasmine, and then there'll be like 700 Jasmines. They'll be like, well, never mind. That's too
yeah.
much. So
Yeah.
that's why the shows and actually this is a cool talk because I think we could do a better job of this too. I try and do as good a job as I can of giving credit to like Cobra and my producer and stuff like that. But Cobra only recently made a graphic that shows their names, and that's going to be nice to actually give them name recognition, but also our guests. And it's tough because on Twitch there is until God, what is it called? Extensions. Until that gets really flushed out, you can't click on anything, right? And very
Mhm.
few people, like a lot of people, look at Twitch on their phone. So even if I have a link to that Bronze Girl's Twitch channel, you'd have to like scope down or type into the chat, or someone would, to then click a hyperlink, which then brings you to it. And that's the best way to do it because then they can just click one button and they're following. People will
Mhm.
actually do that.
Yeah.
So we have that command in the chat, like Cobra's showing right now, and that is great. But ideally, in 5 years or whatever it is, instead of at that bronze girl below your name, it's a extension that you just click on, and then now you're to her Twitter, and
Mhm.
then there's another extension to your Twitch, and then you click that. People do that. They don't click, type, click. They will not do 3. I find.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. You also have to really think about this is something that I do a lot, but I don't know. I don't know if this is healthy or not. When you're taking like a project for exposure, you really have to be brutal with what that project is and how much of you it's going to show off. So let's take like an RPG, for example. Now, the reason I do Sunfall Cycle is because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's not a ridiculous amount of time. It's like 2 hours, and I enjoy the people involved. That's literally why I do it right there. But let's say I was gonna do that for exposure. I really have to think about this because when you do RPGs, people don't really get to know you so much as they get to know
I
your
know.
character.
Right.
Yeah. So they have 0 incentive to go follow you because what do they like you doing? They like you playing
Oh,
Aya,
good call.
and they're already getting that right here. So why would they ever go
Mm,
look at what you're doing somewhere else when, well, I like when she plays RPGs, she's playing an RPG right here. And you kind of have to think of that when you take like freelance projects or projects for exposure. If you're doing it for exposure, if that's the reason you're doing something, you really need to think, well, people like me talking about comic books, and I'm talking about comic books on this radio station. So why would they ever come and check out
mm,
my podcast when I'm giving them exactly what they want and they're giving it right here? So you better get a paycheck from that radio station because you're not going to get anything out of exposure from that. You really have to think about like if you're doing something for exposure, is that exposure of the kind that is going to actually benefit you? Otherwise, you better be getting something else out of it. You either better be getting enjoyment out of it or money.
yeah.
That's that's my standard. Like I do things with friends for free all the freaking time, especially if it's not over 2 hours long. I'm down 100% because I enjoy RPGs. I enjoy sitting here talking with Jeff. But like if it's people I don't know
Hmm.
and it's a time commitment, oh hell yeah, I'm
Pay me.
charging.
Yeah. No,
I
that's
probably sound
actually
like a dick when I say it because people will hit me up for RPG stuff all the time and I don't know who these people are. And I'm just like, oh, what's the pay? And they look at you like you're a monster. And I'm like, I don't know you, bitch. Like,
yeah.
why would I? And they're like, oh, well, I saw you on Just Yeah, I like those people. I don't know you. Like,
Yeah. No, that's funny. And this kind of bounces like everything you said is really good. I actually hadn't thought of that, but I'll get back to that in 1 second. But I do like the other view here for freelance people is view yourself as a resource. Like you can do exposure gigs, but you cannot only do exposure gigs, right? Because you actually have to pay the bills. So I always weigh it like exactly like you just did. If they're like, and same thing with Jesse Cox. So full disclosure, we're not paid to be on that show, and that's okay.
mm,
It's not like it's got 4,000 views on Jesse's channel, so it's also a little bit of a passion project for him. We love hanging out with Steven and Jesse, and it's just really cool. But if it was a 4-hour block and it was like gangbusters just crushing it, then a
and
little
if he
bit,
was making shit tons of money off of it,
yeah,
at that point, that's when you become exploited, right? When it's like, oh, it's
yeah,
cool to see you're making, like thousands of dollars off of us, Jesse. What the
yeah,
hell, And I'm sure if some Fall Cycle ever goes like viral or something or ever blows up, then we'd probably have a conversation about it because Jesse is one of those people. He's a consummate professional,
yeah.
But it's just like there's a difference there. Because once again, there's a difference between, oh, well, I like this person. I was on a show where it was something I did for fun. And the person involved did that weird microtransaction thing where
Hmm.
if you tipped the channel, you could like influence the game. And at that point, I started to feel I was like, okay, so you're running this game to make money, but everybody here is here to have fun. And that's when it starts to feel icky. Like I didn't sign on to make money.
Hmm.
I didn't. I literally just wanted to play the game like the people involved thought it was going to be fun. But then at some point, I did like have like this like kind of like that stuck in my craw a little bit where I was just like, but you've created this model where you make hundreds of dollars off of every episode, but you have us sitting here like idiots for free. I thought we were just doing this for fun and now you've changed the script on us, you know?
Yep.
Like that's when it crosses into the realm of like, well, this doesn't feel nice anymore. Now it feels like exploitative, you know?
Yep. And it's interesting too because not that we need to necessarily go to the other side, but to your point, when you're creating content and it involves other people, you have to be conscientious of that because even if you're not, they are. And that's where the politics of creating content and being a freelancer also comes into play as well. Like again, I do the Pylon show. We pay our guests, but it's only $50, and sometimes the episode can be 2.5 to 3 hours. So I like to believe that they think that's nice and it's benefit, and we do a whole bunch of work to try and make it very clear that we're like giving them a platform, follow them, go check out their stuff. Like it's supposed to be really good, but and the feedback's been good on it, but you have to be open to it and you have to be kind of watching for that. Because again, if our Patreon did hit like $5,000 and we had 6,000 people watching each episode and I still paid everybody $50 for 3 hours of their time while we're killing it, that would feel kind of weird, right? And I've
Mhm.
been a part of that too. An example that's a little bit rough, and this is not to throw shade because I think this was a learning experience for them too. A lot of people know JP McDaniels, but he created State of the Game, one of the best gaming talk shows of all time. And he had to kind of go through a lot of growing pains with that because it started off as just a show he did with friends, and then it grew to being like MLG bought it for tons and tons of money. It would get 10 to 20,000 people watching on Twitch. It would do well on YouTube. Like it was obviously making lots and lots of money. But then the compensation for one part of the season was like it was okay. It was a couple $100 or whatever every few episodes, so okay. But he paid the different panelists different money based off of how important he thought they were to the show, which caused a whole bunch of political friction amongst the panelists because that puts them in a weird spot where because they find out how much everyone's getting paid, obviously, because everybody talks. By the way,
Mhm.
just so everybody knows, like everybody talks. Don't ever you're paying somebody, everybody knows. Uh, don't count on it not being that way, is I guess what I would say. But that was actually one of the downfalls of the show at a certain point was because people were like, well, no, I'm worth more than that, or why is that person getting as much or more than me, or why are they getting less than me? When probably the easiest answer is to just institute everyone's getting paid the same. or and that doesn't work at every scale, and that's why this is an interesting topic, I think, because like for instance on your show, Relics that you did, you're
Mhm.
dealing with some pretty big celebrities, and sometimes they can be like, oh, to do a show, sure, that's $10,000, that's $15,000 for a weekend of filming. Not everybody gets to claim that, and they're not going to pay everybody that. So there's
Right.
like a certain degree of understanding, I guess. But if people are like from the same industry and they're in the general sphere, be careful. You got to look at
I
that very
think
carefully.
part of that to me, the reason that doesn't sit well with me is this. Let's say I'm creating a show and I decide to pull in you and a few other people. And one of those people, maybe they only have like 80 active viewers on Twitch and like 5,000 followers on Twitter. And
Hmm.
I know that they can't really bring in a huge following, right? And here's the thing. If I decide, you know what, I'm going to pay Jeff $400 an episode. I'm going to pay this person 100. I really have to think about, okay, well, what if they want 400? If I say no to that, do I really want them on the show? Well, I do. Well, then clearly they're fucking worth it. That's the difference, right? Like clearly I want this person there for some reason. There's a reason I picked them. There's a reason I want them there. And if I'm relying on lowballing them and them not finding out, well, then that's like,
Hmm.
it's one thing if it's like kind of out in the open. The thing with actors is they all know how much everybody else is making. So it's like pretty well known that if Robert Downey Jr. is making twice what everybody else is making on Avengers, that's been brokered by an agent in a deal, and they're all hitting like a base level of pay that's a little bit more fair.
Yeah.
But even that's kind of starting to come out a little bit where some actors like, Taraji P. Henson on Benjamin Button only got paid like a little bit over 6 figs and she had to pay for her own hotel when she worked on that movie. So at the end of the day, she didn't make that much money. She made, when you break it down for the 90-day shoot, she made like a couple $100 a day. Meanwhile, she's up for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress, right? Like, so it's one of those things where everybody does find out what everybody else makes.
Hmm.
But if you think the person's going to walk and you don't care, then maybe you don't need to have that person, period.
Yep.
But if you think they're going to walk and you do care, well, then clearly they're worth the money.
Yep. And I like your point here too, because it is a back and forth, right? There is not actually a clear answer, and it is about comfort. And this conversation's carried over a little bit in the chat here with Foxy Jen and Jeremy. What I would tell you guys is you're not wrong. Like if for you that is your perspective, so their perspective is like when you sign up for something, you get paid something. It doesn't matter what other people are paid. That's what you got. That's fine.
Mhm.
I think in a vacuum, for me personally, from my perspective, it's cool. But exactly like Bronze just said, then it'll come out in some other movies where somebody did an incredible job and they weren't paid for the work they did. And yeah, you're right. That's on the agent. That's on the people that signed them. Good for them. They got them for less than they're worth. It's pure capitalism. And if that's comfortable for you, totally fine. For me
Mhm.
personally, what I'm trying to say for us as freelancers, but also for people that hire freelancers, you have to be careful about the political ramifications of that. Maybe you got them for that gig and yeah, you saved some money. But then that person blows up and now you can't get them for the next gig because they're like, fuck you. You destroy you like raked me over the coals and did not pay me what I was worth. And you
Right.
just burned a bridge. And what are you gonna say? Like, it's what your agent got you. It's not my fault. That's fine. They're still not gonna work with you because they have a bad feeling about you. So it's not that you necessarily always overpay people. It's that you need to communicate is kind of my point. Like,
Yeah.
and it's up to the freelancer to be comfortable with that as well. But
Yeah, like it's one thing to know like, oh, everyone else is making more than me and for you to sign on for that. And I think the other thing is, even though it's like, oh, well, it shouldn't matter what other people make, the reality of it is that most people who like most companies and production companies that run this stuff know that if you are a full-time streamer or content creator and they can get away with paying you 200 and they can pay this person $700 an hour and you 200 and you won't say no because you're poor, they will 100% only pay you $200 even if you're worth 400.
yeah,
So like that happens a lot in Hollywood too where
uh
it's
huh,
like, she's not going to say no, she needs this role. And it's like, right, but don't you think you should at least pay her like a third of what everyone else is getting paid? No, she's broke. She'll fucking take it. And then it comes out and the dirt, it's like egg on your face because then everybody knows you took advantage of this person. And it's like, it's such shitty publicity. And it was because people were like, she won Best Supporting Actress for that. And you guys only paid her 6 figures. and you paid Kate Blanchett in the same movie $4 million. What the fuck is wrong with you people? And it becomes like really bad publicity. It always, like, things like this almost always blow up in people's faces. And like I said, it's about like some transparency. Like, I would almost respect if a company came to me and was like, because you're a smaller content creator, we're going to be paying you less on this project compared to the other panelists. But finding out from everybody else that they're making 4 times, 5 times what you're making, and they know, and you know in your heart the only reason that they offered you the insulting amount they did is because they knew you were poor, it does suck.
Yep.
Because they're keeping you in that position where you can't quit. They're keeping you in a position where you can't broker a deal because they have all the leverage and you have none.
Yep. And that's where I think the strategy comes into play too. Because if that is the case, where you're like, this is a small creator, I can't pay them, I can't justify paying them as much as I'm paying these bigger creators. You go to them and you offer, you get ahead of the tagline, like you just said. You get ahead of it and say, like, look, this is the case, but we want you to know we think you're fantastic, and we think it's only a matter of time till you blow up. So we'd love to have you on this project. Totally understand if that for this lesser fee, that's not appealing to you. We'd like to compensate you in other ways, and hopefully the exposure can dutifully grow your stuff so that, you know, you get what you deserve. But here's the reality of it. I am 90,000% more likely to be like, all right, that's awesome. These guys got my back.
I've taken jobs like that.
Yes. And then
I've taken jobs like that where they're like, we're going to do our best to boost you. We can't pay you a whole lot right now because you can't bring us a whole lot in terms of, but we really like you as a creator. I will say yes to that because that's better than finding out that everyone else is making 4 times what you're making and you're making $50 because they know that you're poor. Like, that's never a good feeling.
It's a good idea to be legitimate about it, though, right? Like, if you say that, but then next time you're around, you're like, hey, still can't pay you very much. You know, it's tougher to do multiple times. But I guess the point that I would want people to sit with off of this is that there is value in how you negotiate and posture these things. Also, as the talent, like I was saying earlier, if you are that smaller creator, you're like, hey, look, I know I'm not going to get paid as much as such and such and such and such. But I think I bring a lot to the show, so I would ask that you judge me off the content. Hopefully, we hit it out of the park, and then next time around, we can talk about paying me a little bit better. I just in my experience, the employers are like a bajillion% more receptive to that than if I'm like, well, this is a lot less than I normally get paid, but I guess I'll give it a shot. And they're like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like always awkward to talk about. And then a chat's like, oh, well, that's the definition of capitalism. 100%. That's literally what Jeff just said. Yeah, it is capitalism. And we're talking about ways like to maybe navigate that. I want to make that clear. We're not sitting here saying, this is garbage. This isn't how it should work. We're saying this is how it works.
Yeah.
So how do you navigate that to the best of your ability? How do you, like, if you're in charge of production, what is the best way to broach these subjects so that you don't look like a fucking exploitative asshole when all of this comes out? And number 2, if you're the person being contracted, how do you, what to look out for and how to like navigate these waters, you know? Because you don't need to tell us this is how it is. This is how the world is. That's literally what we're saying is this is how the world is.
And I think where I would take this next, great conversation in the chat, by the way. Cellmate is a fantastic salesperson himself at Twitch, does a great job. And Eric, of course, you all know him from Jesse's show as well as many other things. Appreciate you guys' conversation. I would say, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Bronze. One of what I found to be one of the most powerful tools, and again, I recognize this comes from a place of privilege, but I found in negotiations, saying no is one of the most powerful things you can have at your disposal. I've had people either lowball me or offer me a really tough gig where I'm like, what they're offering to pay versus the workload is skewed more in their favor, right? Like it's like a week out of my house and the pay is okay, but it's 12-hour broadcasts and they need me to sell something and I'm going to be on an advertisement. I'm like, how you say no and having the ability to say no is super powerful. So a lot of times in those situations, I'll be like, hey, that looks awesome. I'd love to be a part of it. Unfortunately, I'm really, really busy right now, and I cannot justify the travel, time away from work, and just how taxing that is to me right now. So please think of me for future endeavors, and I'd love to talk to you. I would tell you, and without making up numbers, it's something like 6 or 7 times out of 10, they don't just say, cool, talk to you later. They say, all right, well, what would be a closer competitive pay that we can get you out here? Because if they're talking to you, they want you, by the way.
Hmm.
Very rarely is someone talking, they're like, Jesus, I got to call it bronze. She's number 26 on my list. All right, I'm just starting from the bottom. Like, no, that's usually not the case. There's a reason, and a lot of times salespeople, they're not gonna start off the gig attempt with like, hey, we really need you. You're an incredible talent, and we're willing to pay. We'll pay out of the ass. We'll destroy ourselves for this. No, they're gonna come from a position of like, hey, we're doing this really awesome thing. We were kind of thinking about people who it would be a good fit for, and your name came up from one of the people, and it's like, wow, I'll see if I can get her, I guess. And they need it to come off as like, it'd be cool if you could, but if not, no worries. We're still going to take over the world. And one of the most not even disarming, but just powerful things you can say is, that sounds awesome. It's a tough month for me. I'm actually on 3 gigs that month, and I just can't justify the time away and for that kind of cost. But if you do more stuff, let me know. I'd love to do it. It's powerful. I'm telling you, it's one of my secrets.
It lets them know that you're in demand as well, which is like, once again, it puts you in that power position because it's like, I don't need this.
Mm-hmm.
Because especially in our industry, they're banking on you really freaking needing it. Because most
It
people
has to be true to some
do.
degree too, right? Like if you're also like eating ramen sitting in your empty apartment, you're like, I don't
Yeah,
need it, and they're like, well,
out here freaking eating vomit flavored jelly beans for subs, you fucking telling me you're gonna not take $50 to be on a show? Like,
yeah,
probably. But they're banking on that.
yeah.
They're banking on it. So the second you're like, well, even though I eat vomit flavored jelly beans every time we hit 10 subs because I'm that fucking desperate.
You don't do
I
this though,
also
right? You're just saying an
No,
example.
I make fun of it. I'm
Okay.
mean. I need to stop. I'm
You ever
very
had one of those?
judgmental. No.
Yeah, it's
Have
terrible.
you?
Yes, not
For
for
what?
subs. It was I was a host for a Twitch panel at like Emerald City Comic Con, and we had those jelly beans, man. That was when John Connors worked there though, so we did a whole bunch of weird shit.
Mhm. I can't imagine that's good.
No, there's a poo flavored one too. It's amazing.
Uh, no, no.
Yeah.
Like, so grossed out. But the things like our industry is strange because there's a lot of people who go full time, but they don't make full time money. And so then they spend the rest of the time like doing like, I'll shave off half my head for 300 subscribers.
Yeah.
Like 36-hour marathon. Every time we get a sub, I'm gonna fucking snort some crack and do another 3 hours. Like it's a very strange industry. So when you have those like outward optics, and then like, a company comes and it's like, hey, we would like for you to promote our processor at this convention.
Yep.
What are you gonna do? Turn down $200 because you think you're worth 400? No, you're not. You just ate vomit flavored jelly beans for $40. You're not fucking turning down shit.
That's true.
So the second that you like say, well, no, I have a lot of other vomit flavored jelly beans eating engagements this month, they're like, oh shit, she must make a lot of money
Yeah.
eating those jelly beans. We better up the price.
I'm doing it to her. Ugh. There's like gym sock flavored one, man. It's insane.
Ew. I think
Um,
I've actually had exactly one, and it was like a prank from a friend. And it was the one, but it wasn't anything that disgusting. It tasted like baby wipes.
yeah. Oh, that's fine. There's a grass
That
clippings one too. That's not
Yeah,
bad.
I didn't even realize it was like baby wipes. I put it in my mouth and I was like, that's a weird, is that spearmint? What is that? Like I
Yeah.
was just weirded out. And he was like, ha ha, it's one of those funny jelly beans. And I was like, oh my God, the dog is
Dude, it's so amazing.
until I saw the person behind it, it
Yeah.
scared the shit out of me.
No, the day I got it, I was wearing a Barrison shirt too, which is literally his face printed on a shirt. It was the stupidest dog moment I've ever had in my life. I'm like, I'm a big fan. So one of the other, I think this is like really easy to say, and I'm guessing there's not a whole lot of conversation with this, but it's worth mentioning anyways too. The other thing a freelancer can do to kind of pad their value and help themselves get more gigs and find, because one of the things Bronze touched on earlier that's really true. Sometimes you do a gig, it doesn't pay very well or whatever, but that gig leads to more gigs. They're like, hey, we want to bring you back for this other project. You were so great to work with, and it was fun and good. Be easy to work with, which does not mean you gargle their like testicles and stuff like that. It just means that you are pleasant. You respond to emails. Fuck me, there's some people that don't respond to emails, man. If you're what I tell you, do that. Communicate. Be responsible. Be on time. Don't be hungover the next day and give a bad performance. Like do the professional stuff because it will actually set you above. I would say like 30 to 40%, maybe 50%
Oh
of the people
fuck
you work
yeah.
with.
Yeah. Half of this industry misses their flights.
Oh my god.
Like, don't miss your I know that sounds like a really silly thing. Don't miss your fucking flight. Hi.
Or if you do,
Don't
don't
miss your
tell them, and then
flight.
you have to buy your own. Like you
Buy
just
your own
yeah.
fucking ticket. Yeah, don't miss your flight. The amount of people that do that, it's just like but then
Yes.
you like, let's be honest, I don't think a lot of these people have worked, like, real jobs. I'm not trying to be a cunt. I'm just being honest, like, I have. I'm sure you have,
Oh
Jeff.
yeah.
Yeah, like, I've worked, like, normal I worked at a hedge fund for a while. I was training to be a trading assistant. I know, I wanted to sell stock, and then I've worked several different jobs, like, running the whole gambit, right? So, like and then you have these people that lived with their parents, and their biggest achievement is at the age of 24, moving out,
Mm-hmm.
and they've streamed the entire time, right? So then, like, something simple like making a flight becomes like, "Oh, what?" And the idea of showing up to work next day hungover is like not it's not weird to them. Whereas those of us who have worked normal jobs, like that's not an option
Yep.
because we moved out when we were younger, and the idea of being late for work and being fired is fucking terrifying
Yep.
because you'll fucking starve. And so when I see people miss their flights, I'm just like, bitch, I've never missed a flight in my life. How the hell has this? You see it on their Twitter
Oh, I
timelines, like
know.
missed my flight, and I'm like, this girl has missed her flight like 6 times. I haven't missed that many in my whole life. Like how?
Yep. And here's
It's
the thing.
weird.
Here's the thing. Like this is it's. I mean, people like seeing this on like a car accident level, but this is what happens too. So sometimes you're a big famous freelancer. You're an incredible content creator. People are chomping at the bit. They're paying you a lot of money. So you think that there's kind of this leeway. I missed a flight. Yo, Red Bull, you got to get me another flight. Yeah, man, the party was too good. Okay, couple things happen. I'm a little shitty to work with. This is what I really want. Okay, that's fine. But the moment your numbers either dip or somebody else comes along and they're a big deal too, but they're actually really nice and easy to work with, that X factor, man. Oh my god, it happens so quick. And I'm not going to name names because there's no way to say that without shade. But like, I
Mm-hmm.
work with people who got the business flights, they got the big salaries because they were worth it on some level, especially for those projects. But the second stuff started to equalize and other talent came up or they were just a little bit too hard to work with, that's one of the first things that'll get you out of a gig. And a lot of times, if you are that shitty person, by a lot of times, I'm being scientific, by the way, there's like no job on planet Earth where they contact you like, hey, yeah, you are a sack of shit to work with, so we're just simply not going to hire you because it actually burns a bridge for them because maybe someday they have to, so they don't ever want to say
Yeah.
that. They just are like, you'll be like, hey, I did 3 of these gigs in a row and you didn't call me for the 4th. What's going on? They'll be like, oh, we were just trying out other people. They'll never give you a straight
Yeah.
answer, but being not shitty, and I know it's so weird to say, but it's so important that people hear this, is the first and best thing you can do. You'll actually get gigs because you're so easy to work with and you're professional.
Mhm.
You will absolutely lose gigs, lose future gigs, and get a
Don't be
reputation, which is
late.
one of the things Braun's talked about too as a content creator.
Don't be late. I know it sounds weird because it's like, come on. I know it's like one of those things where people talk about like how to have clear skin. They're like, drink water. And you're like, no shit, bitch. I totally hear that saying like be on time is like, why are they saying that? In our industry, people are late all the fucking time.
Yeah.
Like on set, on everything, people are late. They mosey on in whenever they want to, and they're difficult to work with, and they don't get things back on time. Like if somebody asks you for a reel, like even for a voice acting gig, I
Mm-hmm.
have gotten gigs just because I recorded my demo and sent it back to the producers before other people did. Literally,
Yep.
I'm serious. Like it went from, oh, this was competition to nope, you can have it
Yep.
because I recorded my demo reel and sent it back within 48 hours and they didn't. That's literally the difference between a paycheck and no paycheck.
Yep.
Because in the time that those people took to send something in, they were already booking my flight to fly me out to the recording studio and film the bit.
Well,
So
it's just an easy leg up too, because if you're surrounded by people that are hard to communicate with and they all get back late, but this person's on time and prompt, that's a value. They're like, oh well, I'm going to continue to work with this person because
mhm.
I need to get this done, and if they respond, I can actually do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's one of those things where try to be on the uptake, and this is like a personal sort of like tip from me.
Yeah,
It's better to compromise on your quality and give it back a little bit faster than it is to perfect it and give it back after everyone else.
yeah,
I know that like I'm a perfectionist. So, and I know I've lost opportunities because they didn't like people legit didn't think I was interested in something. And this has nothing to do with Twitch. This is way before that because I spent, like 3 hours working on this portfolio, or not even 3 hours, several days working on this thing, or on like my whatever. And then you send it to them, and by that time they already have like scheduled an interview with the person that they think they're going to hire for the position. I'm serious. Like they've already scheduled an interview and you're just emailing them back. And it's rough because you know that you did your best and that this is like as perfect as it's going to be, but sometimes it's better to compromise and get it to them faster so you're considered faster than it is to give them this amazing, demo reel. It's
yep,
perfect. You recorded it 70 times and it's so good. But you gave it to them like after in a 3-day time window when they kind of needed it in a 24-hour time window.
yep. And
Because
again,
that happens.
I feel like that's I think everyone says yes, I know that, but hopefully our insistence on drilling that in really makes it clear how important that is, because it is a huge X factor. It's I don't feel like it should be, but it is. Like to this day, I keep getting the same gigs, and a lot of that's because I respond and I email, and when they ask me for something, I give it to them, and they're like, okay, this is easy to work with you. You're done. And then there's people that are just kind of tough to work with, and they might still get hired, but then sometimes they don't. And it's not because they're bad at what they do. They're not. They're great. They're just hard to work with. So people just won't do it.
And if you're running behind, just send an email and say that. Like
Oh yeah.
radio silence is the worst thing you can do. Like if someone asks you for something super small, like you already have the project and they ask you for a headshot, for a graphic, for Twitch or something, and it's been like a couple days and you haven't responded, that's really bad. It's almost better to be like, "Hey, I contacted my photographer. She's sending me some headshots without the watermark on
Hmm.
them. Sorry, it's taking her a while to get back to me." That vocalization of just like not radio silence, that's
Yeah.
do that. Like repeatedly do that. Like it's great. And even like with like being easy to work with, I would also say includes like developing a little bit of a rapport with
Yeah.
everybody. Like know people on set. Don't just like suck up to the people in charge of a production.
Hmm.
This is true of any job you do. Like know everybody, know the cameramen, know the lighting guys, and take an effort to be nice to them and
Oh
get to
yeah.
know them because everybody talks in this industry. And so it's so much better to have good rapport with everyone than it is to like just suck up to one person because that's not going to get you very far. Be nice to everybody.
And be genuine. I think that's one of the
Hmm.
funny parts that kind of bleeds through as well. Because if you're just like, if this is a forced, robotic, psychopathic act you're going through, people will see that too, and then it has the it has the reverse effect, right? Like if they're just too nice or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
that's definitely me.
oh, is it?
Just kidding. No, no, I'm the opposite. I'm usually like really quiet and then I'll say something that's like very warm or genuine and people look like shocked. I always get the because I'm very like deadpan.
That's funny. You're a keyboard
I'm very
warrior on camera. You're quite
Yeah,
boisterous.
but then in person, I'm usually very quiet, and then out of nowhere, like, someone will be like, "I'm gonna mess this up," and I'll be like, "Honestly, you have so much poise and grace. I know that they changed the script on you last minute, but I have no doubt in my mind you're not gonna knock it out of the park on the 3rd take." And they're just like,
Aw.
"You haven't said anything all day, but that was the nicest thing you could have said to me." And I'm like, "It's completely genuine too. I believe in you."
I'll go home and talk shit now. No, I'm just kidding. No, you're a good person, Bronze. So let's try to take one final stab at this too. Kind of, and again, there is no real answer, but I felt like we did a good job getting around the subject. But just the idea of like surmising your value. as a
So
content creator.
hard.
I know I think it's next to
So
impossible.
hard.
I'll take the first stab, and this is kind of a shit brain answer because it's like not really an answer, but there is no answer. Um, find a healthy, happy medium between what you want and what makes you happy. And the reason I say that is because if you end up doing a gig you're not happy with, very often your product will be shitty. And then all the things we just talked about, like being pleasant, being professional, doing a good job, it becomes really hard to do and sometimes impossible. And if you set yourself up for that kind of a failure, then that gig actually did you more harm than good potentially. Whereas if you would have said, "Hey, I'm really busy at this time. I'm so sorry I have to pass on that, but please think of me next time. I'd love to work with you. You guys are great." That doesn't necessarily just have to be a strong negotiation tactic. It can also be like this doesn't seem like it's set up for me to do a good job. I'm not going to say yes just to do it because you can actually really fuck yourself up if you do a bad job. So that's not quite self-value, but I'm trying to create the lens that you look at it through. And then from there you then make the judgment calls of like that self-value. So if you're asked to do a thing with the guys like Kevin Smith and these awesome celebrities, maybe you take a little bit less pay, maybe you don't. Hopefully they offer you. Hopefully they take the choice away, right? They're like, "Hey, here's great pay." And you're like, "Jesus, that's awesome." And now I'm not worried about how much Kevin Smith's getting paid because I feel like that's fair pay for me and I'm happy. That
Mm-hmm.
does happen. There's great people to work with out there. But at the same time, you go at it from that lens, and then you approach it, and then that's where you find your self worth, and then you start to gauge. Because here's the shitty answer: you have to kind of find your worth versus everybody else. You kind of gauge it against everybody else. If you're constantly doing gigs and you're the small person, but they need the small person, and you do a great job, then start asking for a little bit more and create that paper trail where you're like, "Hey, last time I worked with you guys, you paid me X amount. It seemed like it went really well. Is there any reason why you think I shouldn't ask for a little bit more this time around just to kind of get compensated more fairly?"
Mm-hmm.
Very rarely are they ever going to be like, yeah, you actually did a bad job, but we just want to hire you again." You're like, nope. They're going to probably be like, the worst answer you'll get most of the time is, "This is all we can pay you with our budget." And then you say, "Okay, I'm okay with working at this rate this time around, but please plan accordingly that I'd like to get paid a little bit more next time because I think I do a really great job. I do love working with you, but I got to pay the bills." That works.
I think in
Your
summary,
turn.
I guess I would have like 2 points. One is like more related than the second one is. So the first one is like what I said earlier, make sure you're getting something out of everything you do. Like either you're really proud of the content you create out of it, or you're getting your name out there and you're building a resume for yourself in some way, shape, or form. 3, you're getting paid, or 4, you're like enjoying yourself. You need
Yeah.
to make sure one of those 4 things is met. Like on every project you do, try to check in with yourself and realize like, is is there a mixture of these 4 things that is reaching a point for me that I'm happy with, like, and you can like Jeff already touched on, you can accommodate for those, right? But out of these 4 factors, is like one compensating for the lack of the other in enough of a way that I come out of it not feeling like I was taken advantage of. That's the big one. The second one I would say is I was just talking about this. This is like something Jackie Chan said. I love Jackie Chan. He was saying that when he does, like any movie, there's like some stunts that he does, and he doesn't like doing like really small cuts.
Hmm.
And some of his stunts will take him 120 takes
Hmm.
to have it done. And he doesn't like working with American producers a lot because he says that they won't let him do that. They'll try to say, well, let's just cut here and then cut to you catching the fan instead of trying to do it all in one stunt. And what he said is that when it comes down to it, there's no such thing as an excuse like it was raining that day or the actor didn't have time, because you're not going to go to every single movie theater and say it was raining that day and the actor didn't have time. The audience doesn't have that
Mm.
context. So they're just going to look at whatever you made and say this is either a shit movie or a good movie. I know that that's about films, but that's true with everything. If and Jeff touched on that too. Like if you are in a bad mood or in a bad place, or you think that this is not for you, you're too tired. Maybe you've taken too many gigs this week. No one's going to have that context when they look at that piece of art that you put out, or when they look at that piece of work you put out. They're just going to look at the final project, or the final product, I should say. And that is going to determine whether the company is going to work with you again and how your audience perceives you.
Yeah.
So remember that. So remember your own limitations in terms of like physical limitations, emotional limitations, and whether you're happy, or not, your mental limitations on a project, and realize other people will never have that context. And your bad work will never like cancel out your good work, but your good work will also never cancel out your bad work. They're both going to be associated with you. So
Yeah,
always try to put your best foot forward because that's going to follow you around forever in any field, any freelancing field.
like that. That was good. All right,
Yay.
chat. We're wrapping up. If you have any quick hitting questions you can ask before we sign off, I'd love to hear it. It's a tough subject. Like we said, we're kind of laughing about this because going into it was like something Bronze talked about on our channel, and Cobra brought it up, and I thought it was a good idea. But it's like there is no singular good answer to all this, and a lot of this advice I think some people know, but others hopefully it helped you hear it. While we're closing down, a couple of things. Like we said, we want to do a gym episode. That's probably next. We'll try to have some guests on for that. I haven't even asked Bronze about this, but one of the episodes I want to do in the near future is also literally just a Q&A episode where like you guys submit questions in advance and we talk about them because
That'd be
usually,
fun.
yeah, like the process for Bronze and I is we're just like, what do you want to talk about? And we're like, I don't know. We spend a week like figuring it out. But if you guys have topics that you think we should talk about, there's a Discord on my Discord. It's the Deadpan Diaries section there. Throw topics in there. We read them. Or even just put them in the comments of the YouTube video or whatever. I do check that and I read all that. So if you're watching this or listening and there's something you want to hear us talk about, please feel free to give us ideas. Worst case scenario, we don't talk about it. Best case scenario, it's a whole episode, man. It could be great. Or we just do an episode where we handle like a lot of questions. But it looks like
I feel
there's...
jealous of your bulldog, so I'm grabbing my elephant.
That's exactly it. It looks exactly... It's a... Dude, if elephants came in that size, though, best pet
Oh my
ever.
God. Puppy-sized elephants, please.
Just trumpets into the room, comes running in. Be amazing.
Stop. I would die. That's why they don't exist, because my heart would explode and I would die if it.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's too
that'd be so
designer for me, so I
perfect.
feel weird, but I like the micro pigs. Like, there's some of those videos of them, like, just running around being goofy, and I'm like, that's a cool pet.
Right? Anything that's like normally big, when you shrink
Yeah.
it down, you're like, oh, that's really cute.
It's cute, but it's just too weird for me. I don't know.
hmm
Just run around.
I would carry around a baby elephant in my purse. I would lift weights until that was very possible. Yeah, because it would be too cute to see like to have like a puppy-sized elephant
There you go.
as a
That's your new
pet.
gym goals. You just want to be
That's
strong enough to carry a baby elephant around. So I know it's just an offhand comment. No, everything but politics. What I don't know that we're gonna have a politics episode, but what I like about this is that Bronze is, as far as I know, pretty down to talk about anything, and that's what I like about this. Is we had a whole episode about flirting. I think that's super awkward and weird, but it's so cool to be able to talk about these things, and that's why this setting's really fun. So
We're all adults here.
yeah, are we though? Is it though? Okay, one thing was. All right, let's do this last question, then we'll sign off. I know what I do works because of how people react to it emotionally. I find it hard to believe because I wasn't raised in a high self-esteem environment. How can I hack my hubris? How can I make myself believe emotionally I'm the impact my eyes see in front of me when I talk to people in person? That's a really fucking good question.
That is.
Damn.
I feel like you're more equipped to handle that than I am. Because you handle yourself with like a self-assurance and grace that I think most of us envy.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh. So the tough thing about this is it comes from and this is a quality that I really admire in people, and I try to surround myself with these people, and Bronze definitely falls in that category, but introspective people that can be critical of themselves have the opportunity to create a confidence that is exactly what you're talking about, what people talk about. And it's not to say that, for instance, I have all the same, well, it's not fair to say all the same, but I have anxieties like people do as well. When I'm on a set of something, or if I'm asked to do something, one of the first concerns I have is like, they could have got somebody better, or what if I'm not funny, or what if they find I don't gel as well with the people and they're disappointed that I'm there. And what I've kind of ultimately, I don't know that this truth will resonate with everybody, but what I've found to be true is that a lot of times that stuff's out of your control. So what can you do? Can you live in fear of it happening or the possibility of it happening? or can you realize that it could happen, but you'll just do the best you can to not let it happen? And I think, and if it does, then it does, and you'll survive. Like the words of wisdom that this comes from for me, and it's been really important to me lately, is someone's father once told me that you should love somebody as much as you possibly can, if that's what your heart calls for, knowing that that person could absolutely butcher you. They could take your heart and crush it, and they could just be like fuck you, and it'll devastate you. And there's nothing to say to that. But what do you do? Never love someone fully. Never allow yourself the ability to open up to somebody. I don't think that's not an optimal life that I picture, anyways. Like I want to live my life exposed to someone that they could annihilate me, but knowing that it's possible doesn't stop me from still doing it. Is I guess what I'm trying to get at. This is a very weird and deep answer to your question, but I guess from that is where the confidence comes to be like, no, I do a really good job, and if they don't like it, shoot, I'll try to do a better job, but it's just a risk that comes with the territory, I guess.
So you allow yourself to be vulnerable, and that's
Yep.
where your confidence comes from.
Hmm.
That's very interesting. I like that. That's a really different answer than I think like most people give.
Yeah, and it's not for everyone too. I think there's a funny, and this is where these answers are a little bit tough. It's not that anybody could crush me, right? Like I'm not open to everybody. Like if I walk down the street and someone's like, I don't like your hair and you're a fucking idiot. And I'm not like, oh no, like what? Love me, please. Like it's not like that. Like I'll be like, fuck you too, mate, and like walk away or whatever. But when I do something, when I do work that I really care about, I pour enough of myself into it that if somebody I really care about was like, I actually think that's shit, I don't like what you just did, that would hurt me because I do allow myself to put that much kind of effort into something. Whereas, do you guys know, like, I know people, do you know people that are like, you can't hurt them? Like, anything they do, they just don't value your opinion
Yeah.
enough to be like, nah, it's fine. I
Yeah.
like it, so fuck you. That's a way to be safe, I think. But to me, that's a lesser existence. Like, it's
Those
harder.
people also typically are very stunted.
Yeah.
Like they don't really grow and they don't really get better. They reach like a base level of like success or a base level
Hmm.
of like quality and they can never surpass it because they anything negative you say about them, that's just the haters, and anything positive, well, that's the truth. And so it's like they also don't grow, but they also have like endless confidence and they deserve everything. And I'm a damn good role player. I deserve to be on shows, but there's no growth there at all.
Yeah.
So that's the downside of that, even if they are very confident.
I know. Yeah, it's a dangerous way of living. I'm telling you. Like, it's you have to be responsible with it, and you have to learn where to pull it in and where to push it out. But I do. I've been doing this for a long time. I do think that is at least for me, it's the better way to live. Like it's more interesting. If I just put up a wall and nobody could get near me, and that's just how I live my everyday, I think I would be bored. I'd be very lonely and bored. Like I need somebody to have a deep talk with, and for them to at some point be like, "Well, that's fucked up what you just said." I'll be like, "Why?" And then I care enough about their opinion for them to tell me about it. Whereas if you just live your life where you're like, I don't care. They're like, I don't like that. That's fine. Anyways, I'm gonna have lasagna for dinner. Goodbye. Safer, but not as good. So yeah, sorry. I tried to answer that, but it's a tough one. Anyways, let's wrap it up there. It's a great episode again. And in the spirit of what we talked about, please, I get a lot of good feedback about this. Do me the favor of doing the extra clicks. Bronze comes to my channel to talk about this, but if you tune into her stream, she's constantly. When do you do your morning talk show? It was today, but do you do it every day, or is it just?
Yeah, I open up every morning with like a hour, 2 hour long, just like it's not as structured as this. I kind of just we ramble. Sometimes I tell anecdotes about my life
It's sick.
because I've had a lot of different jobs. Horror stories about when I used to do makeup. That was a whole conversation.
You guys get
Bright
deep though.
villas and stuff.
Sometimes tuning in, you're just yelling at someone, calling them an asshat. Then other times I tune in, you're like talking about third or fourth love
I get
relationship.
along with Australians a lot because they're like me, where if someone's like, "Oh, well," and I'm like, "Whatever, Tooch, you're a goddamn cunt," and I move on. And you could tell, like, if it's a lot of people, like army dudes and Australians are the same because they're like, haha, and they usually like stick around. But other people are like, why would you say that to me? I understand that we disagree, but why would you say that to me? Why would you say that in front of all of these people?
Yeah,
Why are you so angry? And I'm like,
you're an American. That's
you're a
that
little
person.
bit.
Australia, yeah. No, Australians get along with everybody. They're the fucking salt of the earth. I love those people. Anyways, Bronze is like an hour or two talk every day. She streams and then she plays some great games. So do me the favor of checking out her channel. We got really good feedback from all this. But if you're listening on the podcast, if you're listening on YouTube, or if you're here in the stream and you're a frequenter of my channel, that Bronze Girl on Twitch, just go check it out. If you like this content, you'll have a good time. Bronze, what are you up to? What are you doing?
The usual. I stream every single day except for Sundays. I'm taking a 3-day weekend or break this weekend.
Ooh.
So yeah, I'm gonna be at WonderCon for a Relics and Rarities panel. And then I'm taking a couple days for myself. So yeah. So I'm
Nice.
probably not gonna be live this weekend, but leading up to that. And I'll see you guys on Sunfall Cycle tomorrow. And that's about it. I'm starting a D&D podcast soon. It's called The Real Housewives of Ravnica. So keep an eye on my social media for that. It's going to be great. I'm really proud of it. And yeah, that's me.
That'll
Bye,
be very
hello.
cool. I leave tomorrow for a Adepticon, which is a Warhammer 40k tournament. So I'll be commentating that on the Warhammer channel on behalf of Games Workshop. But then I get back next week. And I believe I'm actually... No, I leave that weekend. But anyways, I'm back all week, so I'll be streaming. I'll be back on Sunfall Cycle, but Eric is going to be there in my stead. It's almost a shame that I'm the one that travels all the time, because then I don't get to see Eric. But Eric's good people. It's a great show. Check it out. It's on Jesse's YouTube as well. Both Bronze and I are on that. And then we'll do the next Deadpan Diaries. And actually, I'm going to try to learn. So it's TDDTTATOJNG. AHT. It's so fucking sick, dude. I'm gonna write down the full name of this show in letters. Is actually like as long as most shows' names. It's incredible. I want to do that at some point.
I'm
Uh,
gonna put it on a T-shirt
yeah,
and sell it at Jeff's meet and greets.
it just like wraps around halfway around the shirt. Just
I'm gonna have it go all the way around the shirt. Oh my god, front and back!
yeah.
That would be cool.
Hoper's trying to write it right now. It's insane. We'll get it memorized anyways. We'll have another episode. I think you can tentatively plan for it to be the gym episode, and then we'll try to set up the Q&A episode as well. But just thank you, everybody, for the positive feedback. It's been, people have been really nice about it. It's awesome. And people from everywhere, StarCraft, Warhammer, chat, all that stuff. It's great. Maybe a Warhammer stream tonight. We'll see. Keep your eye on our Twitters, hers and mine. That's where we announce all our stuff that we go live and do. So that's the best way to probably follow us there. Thank you guys so much. Bye-bye.